to make that available to you.
But we didn't have time to get it single. People, we are without our screen this morning, and so if you'd like to start singing with me, it's in your hymnal, your gray hymnal, 131, Love Will Guide Us. And why don't you go ahead and get up? This is a good gospel-y song.
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you for bringing the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane here to this place on this beautiful June morning. My name is David Boos. I have the privilege of being a lay leader this morning and the honor of sharing the pulpit with our guest speaker, the Reverend Dr. Emily Brault. I'll introduce her a little bit later, or a little more fully a little bit later. But it's a delight to have her here as part of our service this morning. And I don't know if you noticed it, but she sings beautifully. I get to sit up here and listen to her sing too. So, as we do every Sunday, I want to start by welcoming you here this morning, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in the wider world. Or, as we like to say in brief, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Notice that the first words of our mission statement are that we join together. We are a welcoming faith and a welcoming congregation, and we know that the work we are trying to do requires all of us. So, every Sunday, we welcome you, whoever you are, and we value and appreciate the gifts and the perspectives and the experiences and the identities that you bring with you. Whether you were 0-3 yesterday, or 3-0, or if you missed the whole Hoop Fest reference completely, you're welcome here. It's all right. And of course, we welcome those of you who are joining us online as well. We appreciate having you here in spirit, if not in person. I do have one quick announcement before we greet one another. Today at 12:30, we're going to have a fire drill. So we're looking for people who are interested in basically helping us see how our protocol works. So if you're interested at 12:30 and you're here, then we'll be announcing an evacuation of the building and giving you directions for how that's going to work. If you would like to stay and be part of that, we encourage you to do so we can see how our protocols work. If you'd rather not, we totally understand. For now, please take a moment and share a little bit of this beautiful summer morning with those around you, whether you're here every Sunday or if this is your first Sunday. We are very glad you're here. Extend a hand, and I guarantee you'll be warmly welcomed. As usual, there will be plenty of time to continue those conversations after our service in the Friendship Hall with some coffee. You can buy one of our lovely tie-dyed T-shirts back there as well. Get to know one another. I see one is already there. So anyway, continue those conversations. But for now, we'll move from our informal greeting of one another to the formal beginning of our service, which is when we light our chalice. The chalice is the symbol of Unitarian Universalism, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a shadow of reasonable doubt where it's been found. Our opening words this morning come from a sermon by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. from 1957 from the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. There is something within all of us that causes us to cry out with Ovid, the Latin poet, "I see and approve the better things of life, but the evil things I do." There is something within all of us that causes us to cry out with Plato that the human personality is like a charioteer with two headstrong horses, each wanting to go in different directions. There is something within each of us that causes us to cry out with Goethe, "There is enough stuff in me to make both a gentleman and a rogue." So somehow, the isness of our present nature is out of harmony with the eternal oughtness that forever confronts us. And this simply means this, that within the best of us there is some evil, and within the worst of us there is some good. When we come to see this, we take a different attitude toward individuals. The person who hates you most has some good in him. Even the nation that hates you most has some good in it. Even the race that hates you most has some good in it. And when you come to the point that you look in the face of every person and see deep down within them what religion calls the image of God, you begin to love them in spite of. No matter what they do, you see God's image there. There is an element of goodness that they can never slough off. Discover the element of good in your enemy, and as you seek to hate them, find the center of goodness and place your attention there, and you will take a new attitude.
And let's hope that this first hymn will help us learn how to open up after we touch that new attitude. We are number 396 in your hardback hymnal. I Know This Rose Will Open. We haven't sung this one in a while, so we normally used to do it in round. We're going to sing it all together, if you would rise as you're willing and able. I'll sing it through first, so you'll get a sense of it, and then we can try it 3 or 4 times together as we learn it again. Okay? I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will
Good morning. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me now? Thanks. The story I chose today is called Coffee's Mom. Coffee was sitting in his favorite spot in the backyard. He was thinking about lots of things. He began to think about his mom. He wondered what she was doing. Was she happy or sad? Was she thinking about him? Coffee's mom did not live with him anymore. She had been sent to prison. She was there with lots of other women, and some of them were moms too. When Coffee was told his mom had gone to prison, he didn't know what to do. Sometimes Coffee felt angry because his mom had gone away. Sometimes he felt frightened. Sometimes he felt sad. But most of all, he just missed her. He thought he should be grown up and not show he was unhappy. Coffee did not tell anyone how he felt. At school, Coffee's friend asked him where his mom had gone. Coffee did not want to tell him. He wanted it to be a secret. When his teacher asked Coffee where his mom was, he didn't tell her either. The teacher asked whose parents would be coming to the carnival. Josh said his dad wouldn't be coming because he was in prison. At playtime, Coffee told Josh all about his mom. They told each other stories about visiting the prison. One day, Coffee had a special visitor who knew his mom was in prison. She played games with him and talked with him about his mom. Next time she came, she said, "Mommy still loves you, even though she's in prison." After that, Coffee felt much better. Coffee went to visit his mom in prison. It looked like a big castle. He was so happy to see her. She was just the same as she had always been. She told him about her life in prison. Coffee was very sad saying goodbye, but he knew he'd see her again. Coffee now talks about his mom. He's glad he's not the only person with a mom or a dad in prison. Sometimes Coffee and Josh play together on the playground, and they share their stories. We can sing our children out. Thank you.
This morning we have a special collection. If you open your order of service, you'll find a small envelope there. Please use this if you wish to donate this morning, and don't worry about licking it shut because we do like to reuse the envelopes. Our special collection this morning is on behalf of the Ministers' Sharing Fund. This fund provides emergency assistance to members and friends of our church impacted by job loss, emergency health issues, or unexpected financial difficulties. Your gifts to this fund represent grace, mercy, and justice to those right here in our midst. If this ministry speaks to you, we invite you to give generously. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and our mission to the larger world. Thank you, Michelina. Each time we gather as a congregation, there are always those who are with us in our hearts and minds and who we want to wrap in our love and care. Let us share a moment in silence this morning, embracing others who are here in our hearts. You're welcome to say their names aloud as you are willing. Those named aloud and those remembered in the silence, and all those who are suffering elsewhere in our world this hour, we hold in our community of compassion. This is now the time in our service where we take a few moments for silent meditation. So I encourage you to make yourself comfortable as you wish. Take a breath. The words that take us into meditation this morning come from Kathleen McTeague. We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment, until we claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and see their communion, the reflection of our own eyes. For our reading this morning, Reverend Brault has selected a passage from the Christian New Testament from the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 43 to 48. You've heard that it was said, "Love your neighbor and hate your enemy." But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect in love, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect in love.
Good morning. Is this on? Good. If there are traces of an old cop reporter on this that crept into my lyrics here this morning, I make no apology for them. You just have to accept them. Ever since I first heard about Carrie Lynn Dalton from her sister, Victoria Thorpe, who is an author and activist, I haven't been able to stop thinking about her. But it's the silence around her case that made me want to write this song. Here's a song for Carrie Lynn Dalton. She would not play the game and lie on the stand. The law contrived a way to put her on death row and cover the blood on their own hand. No matter how far she goes, no matter how long she's gone, you never forget your sister's smile. You were out in the pouring rain, she waved from a window pane. Sister, I'll see you in a little while. There's a highway running straight through San Diego County, and way back when, in 1988, the people demanded someone answer for all the bodies found along that interstate. Took 7 years to build a crooked trial. No crime scene, no blood stains, not a shred of evidence. Carrie Lynn never harmed a soul on any highway. Justice awaits the guilty man. No matter how long she's gone, you never forget your sister's smile. You were out in the pouring rain, she waved from a window pane. Sister, I'll see you in a little while. Judge to the prosecutor, down to the police. Even now the lawyers won't allow a hearing or talk about the chance for her release. 22 years she's locked up in California, in a cage that measures 6 feet by 10. By day, she sleeps to hide from taunts and trouble. At night, she lives for freedom again. sister smile. You were out in the pouring rain. She waved at you from a window pane. Sister, I'll see you in a little while. Oh, but sister, such a long, long while. And sister, how I miss your smile.
Thank you, Pam. In his book, Long March to Freedom, Nelson Mandela wrote, "It is said that no one truly knows a nation until one has been inside its jails. A nation should not be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but its lowest ones." Our guest this morning, the Reverend Dr. Emily Brault, has been inside our jails. She says she knew she was going to be a prison chaplain even before she knew what denomination she'd be serving in. She was on the path to becoming an academic at the time in a PhD program in religion, culture, and society. And she says she was bored. So she went to her graduate advisor and said she needed to do something more useful with her life. So her advisor introduced her to a friend who was leading vocational workshops at the local Catholic church and who was himself a prison chaplain. One day she accompanied him to the prison where he was working, and she said she discovered that these were her people. She felt a real calling to do this work. So she switched PhD programs and universities and cities to one that had a chaplaincy program. She was in Nashville, Tennessee. She discovered the Unitarian Universalist Church there, and then had her first chaplaincy job at the juvenile boys facility in the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and she's been doing the work since. She's currently at the Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Wilsonville, Oregon, just south of Portland, where she's been the chaplain for almost 13 years. This morning, she's sharing her experiences in caring for all of the members of the prison community, and her reflections on what it means to truly stand on the side of love. Please welcome Reverend Brault.
Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. I thank you for inviting me. And the disadvantage of drinking coffee, I have learned, is that it sucks all the water out of your mouth, right? I mean, what's that about? So, we'll try to get through this anyway. As David said, I work in the women's prison down in Oregon. We have a variety of people that are incarcerated there, of course. We have women who have killed other people, assaulted other people, hurt children. We've had burglars. We have ID theft. We have drunk driving. We have people who have killed people while drunk driving. It's quite a wide array. People serving a year and a day, and we have people serving life without the possibility of parole. It's my job as the chaplain to love them. That doesn't mean that I excuse them for what they've done. It doesn't mean that it just means I love them. And if they're willing to do the work to change, then I am honored to do that work with them. But if they're not willing to do the work to change, I am still their chaplain, and I will still be with them. I will listen to them. I will befriend them. I will honor their lives and affirm their struggles. I will be there when their children go up for adoption. I will be there when their mother passes away and they can't be there. I will be there when their brother is killed by a drunk driver. I will be there. A few months ago, I went outside with some of the women. One of the women, her father had passed away, and she wanted a chance to pray and to smudge with some of her friends and her auntie. So we went out to the sweat lodge area, and we did just that. And the woman brought a picture of her and her dad. It was a picture taken in the visiting room of a federal penitentiary, and her dad was dressed in his prison tans, and she was dressed in the heavy makeup and high hair of a high school teenager. She told me once that she grew up in that visiting room, that her dad was only out of prison for about 3 years of her life, that she could remember. But they were the best 3 years of her life, because they were the only 3 years in which she wasn't abused, in which she wasn't mistreated, in which she felt safe in the world. And she said she learned everything she knows about life from her dad, which might be part of the reason why we're praying inside of prison instead of outside of prison. But nevertheless, we were there to mourn the life of her dad and to honor the blessings that he had to give to his daughter and his friends and his family. Of course, there was a minute amongst these prayers when I thought to myself, I wonder what his victims would think of this. I wonder what his victims would think of this man's death. I mean, I don't know what he did to get into prison. I'm sure it wasn't buying groceries for somebody or helping somebody cross the street or the like. After all, I know his daughter. And his daughter is strong and tough and connected and stubborn. And in the end, I wasn't with his victims. I was with her. And so we mourned. And we gave thanks for the life of this man. People are complicated. And we only see this much of the entirety of who they are. And yet we so often think we know them. This came true, this is true in my own life. When it came to the relationship with my stepfather. He wasn't a real nice guy to us kids. We walked on a lot of eggshells in our house. Our friends didn't really come over very often because we never knew what it was going to be like. And he also happened to be a minister. And I remember when he died about 6 years ago, and I went to his funeral. And I remember people getting up and telling stories about what a kind and generous man he was, and how good and compassionate he was, how he was a great mentor and a great teacher, and I leaned over to my stepsister at one point and I said, "Who the hell are they talking about?" And it's taken some time, and maybe just a bit of getting older, that I've come to appreciate the fact that he wasn't a jerk to everyone, right? I mean, I might not have been a recipient of his goodness, but somebody was. I mean, there are some people that he had very positive, compassionate, impacting relationships with. And on a good day, I can give him some credit for that. Because what I saw was this much of what he had to offer in the entirety of his life. People are a mixed bag, right? If only it was more simple. But we live in a culture that likes to simplify things a lot. Who the good guys are, who the bad guys are. I mean, we started out this country that way. We started out with genocide of people who didn't look like us, didn't look this color, right? Our economy was founded on the backs of African Americans that were brought here against their will, right? And they weren't like us. No. They weren't like us. And our economy continues to be built on the backs of the poor and the oppressed and the marginalized. And we are inheritors of a tradition that always sides on the side of the marginalized. Right? We are descendants of a gospel based on a guy who hung out with prostitutes and tax collectors and prisoners. We are descendants of a gospel based on the story of a guy who said, when you are with the least of these, you are with me. We have inherited a theology of solidarity with the underdogs. Why? Why is that so important? Because it gets us past our own egos, right? It helps us shed light, take our blinders off on the ways that people are treated in our culture, in our society, and the struggles are. It helps us get past that divide of who's really bad and who's really good. In our zealous drive for justice and equality, we choose the have-nots over the haves every time. And then this happens. The people in power, the people with the guns and the authority and the control, they become the scourges of justice. They become the bad ones. We have just flipped the paradigm. That's all. The people in power become the disdained, the underbelly of society. We scorn them, we villainize them, and we know which side love stands on. Right? We know, because it's got to be our side. And look what we've done. We have bought in to the idea, to a worldview that is divided. A worldview divided by power and privilege, us versus them, the haves and the have-nots. We have chosen sides. We are participating in the dehumanization of a people. Now, I am not advocating that we don't choose which policies, which politicians, which preachers, which pizza, which communities we are going to invest our lives in. That's important choices to make. It's important for us to live out our values and our truths in this world in some very real ways. But when it comes to dividing it into who the good people are and who the bad people are, that doesn't make sense for me anymore. It just doesn't make sense for me. And I believe we live in a world divided. I believe that racism is real and that oppression is real, and there are there are a lot of people in our culture, in our society, who are being disadvantaged by those with the power and those with the control. I believe that wholeheartedly. But those people aren't going to change by us pointing at them and shaming them and throwing rocks at them. I certainly never changed when somebody threw rocks at me. That's not how I changed my mind. I changed my mind when I got to know somebody, when I let somebody in, when in my church in Oregon City, there's a, what's it called? A thing that hangs. No. A mobile. And it's based on this guy's poem. It says, it's this mobile of two circles, and it says, they drew a circle to keep me out. Rebel, heretic, a thing to flout, something like that. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took them in. That was your, what's it called when you, oh, never mind. Anyway, in 1963, Martin Luther King gave the eulogy at the funeral service for the victims for the Birmingham church bombings. Remember those days? And this is what he said. He said, the victims say to each of us, black and white alike, that we must substitute courage for caution. They say to us that we must be concerned, not merely about who murdered them, but about the system, the way of life, and the philosophy which produced the murderers. We must be concerned not only with who murdered them, not only with who set this bomb off and killed these children, but we need to be concerned about the way of life and the philosophy and the culture and the norms and the assumptions of what it means to be human and who we are related to. That's what we got to pay attention to. That's what we got to do. This isn't about our personal opinions, right? This isn't about what we think about race or creed or color or sexual orientation. This is about systems of structure and power that we have the responsibility to transform. That we have the responsibility to bring justice to and to expect justice from. Not by pointing fingers, not by engaging in us versus them, but in participating in transformative love. Transformative love. One of the things I've learned about being in prison is that it's really bad for people. It just is. It's a broken system full of broken policies, incarcerating the wrong people for too long. It's very expensive. And people who spend time in prison come out of there with PTSD. It's not helpful. It doesn't solve our problems, and that's a whole nother sermon. But the point I want to make this morning is that it's not good for the people who work there either. It's not. Correctional officers, counselors who work in prison, who work in this system of power and control, are affected by the community and the culture that they work in 40 hours a week. It affects them, right? Correctional officers and cops have similar life outcomes. They have PTSD. They have high rates of alcoholism and drug use. They have high rates of divorce. They have very high rates of suicide. There was a time not too long ago in Oregon when over over the course of 18 months, we have about 2,000 employees that work for the Oregon Department of Corrections. And over the period of 18 months, we had 5 suicides. 5. In a year and a half. That's not unusual. There are correctional officers in our country who talk about going to work as stepping into a war zone. And they put on their armor before they go. There are some prisons, not in Oregon, and I doubt in Washington, but there are some prisons in this country where people who work desk jobs have to wear flak jackets, which are like stab vests, right? To protect themselves, to feel safe in their workplace. And don't think that you can just leave that stuff at work. That's not how it goes. These people go home. They go home to their families, to their kids, to their communities. And they have adopted a stance of self-protection, self-preservation, hyper-vigilance. They know what's going on all the time, everywhere. They don't sit with their back to other people in the restaurant. They sit with their back to the wall so they can see everything that's going on around them. They don't come home and it affects them. Does this make sense? You get what I'm trying to say, right? This work ain't good for no one. Prison's not just bad for prisoners. It's bad for all of us. Because that trauma comes back into our community when we release inmates and when staff come home from work at the end of their shift. There's another strain of our history. It's the one that David read earlier out of Matthew 5. The one about, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. My interpretation of this verse goes like this. If you only love those who are easy to love, what do you learn? How do you grow? If you really want to learn about love, try loving your enemies. Try loving the people that really tick you off. Try loving the unlovable. That's the real challenge. Because really, they are not much different than you. True love, authentic love. I'm not talking about love light. I'm not talking about easy love. I'm talking about deep love, sustaining love, love that reminds us who we are, transcends any division that we might think exists between us and them. It takes us to that field that Rumi talks about in his poem. Beyond the fields of right doing and wrongdoing, there is beyond. Is that right? Beyond the field? No, beyond something. The ideas. Beyond the idea of right doing and wrongdoing, there is a field. I will meet you there. And when the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Authentic love embraces the entirety of who we are and who we are meant to be. It holds us, it is the only thing that can hold us in hope and healing And it inevitably calls us beyond ourselves, beyond the duality of how we perceive the world, into a larger vision, into a larger experience that transcends the finitude of our own understanding. Big love embraces both sides. It must. Or we will never know how to love our own souls. We are a faithful people. We are a people with distinct values and understandings of who we are related to. And our faith must be large enough to remind us always that we don't get to choose our relatives. You can pick your friends, but you can't pick your relatives. And it is our responsibility to nurture and develop and act out on a love that transcends us all. In the name of all that is holy, I pray. Amen.
We're going to close with a wonderful African American hymn. It's number 95 in your hardback hymnal. There is more love somewhere. Please stand as you're willing and able.
There is more love.
benediction this morning comes from the Reverend Dr. Emily Brault. In our conversation several weeks ago, she said, "Where religion and spirituality help us is not in escaping our lives, but in helping us get into our lives in ways that foster meaning and purpose." May it be so. Amen. Blessed be. Salaam alaikum. Shalom.